At a private gathering filled with world leaders and billionaires, the 5-year-old son of Elon Musk wandered into the garden and found Donald Trump sitting alone. He sat beside him, looked up and asked, "Why do people hate you?" No cameras, no filters, just a child asking the one question no adult ever dared to ask. And what followed left the president speechless. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to hit the subscribe button. It was meant to be an ordinary evening at Mar-a-Lago, a private event, off the record. No press, no podiums, no red carpets, just a curated mix of power brokers, billionaires and legacy figures lounging under the Florida sun, the kind of people who made moves over shrimp cocktails and rewritten headlines over handshakes. Elon Musk wasn't a regular at these events, but when Donald Trump personally extended the invitation, Elon accepted, not because of politics but because of curiosity. Curiosity about how legacy figures moved in and out of rooms like these, and perhaps because his son X had never seen anything quite like it. Elon arrived with X in tow. X had his father's inquisitive silence but none of his guardedness. He walked a few steps behind Elon as they entered, wearing a black button-up and navy canvas sneakers, staring up at the vaulted ceilings as if they were part of a spaceship. The guests mingled in the main hall, polished marble beneath their feet and chandeliers glittering above. There was champagne, laughter, and familiar faces orbiting familiar power. Elon was quickly swept into conversation with a former Secretary of Commerce and 2 foreign investors, leaving X to wander. No one paid much attention to the boy as he drifted past the caviar bar, under the grand staircase, and out through the double doors leading to the garden. Except one man, Donald Trump, sitting alone on a cream-colored stone bench beneath a sculpted palm. The late afternoon sky was bleeding orange over the ocean. For once, no aides hovered, no cameras flashed. Just him, a Diet Coke sweating beside him, and the quiet lapping of waves in the distance. He wasn't used to this stillness, but it clung to him that day, a rare pause in his storm. He spotted X before the boy noticed him, a small figure in a gray hoodie weaving through the garden. Curiosity pulled him closer. Trump didn't turn away. His eyes settled on X, now familiar with Elon's son, the little oddball who had trailed his dad to enough events to earn a nod. X stopped a few feet off, hands clasped behind his back like a pint-sized professor, and Trump studied him, half-guarded, half-amused, the same look he gave to CEOs and rivals, softened by recognition. "Hey X," he said, his voice quieter than usual, the gruff edge smoothed by habit. X nodded, stepping closer without hesitation. "Hi, Mr. Trump." Trump squinted, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Still just X, huh? That letter thing in the symbol." X replied matter-of-factly, his blue eyes steady. "Yep, that's it." Trump chuckled low. "You don't change, kid. Serious as ever." "I always am," X said, a slight shrug in his shoulders. Trump took a sip of his Diet Coke, the cold compressed against his palm. "You talk like you're 50. Been saying that since I met you." X tilted his head, a small scientist at work. "Dad says I talk like I already know what I'm looking for." Trump raised an eyebrow, leaning back. "Yeah. And do you?" X paused, unclasping his hands and stepping closer, the question clear in his stance. "I want to ask you something," he said. Trump straightened up, more attentive now. "Sure, go ahead." X looked him directly in the eyes, clear, honest, unaffected by the weight of who Trump was. "Why do people hate you?" The question landed like a hammer wrapped in velvet. Trump didn't blink. For a moment he didn't even breathe. Then, slowly he leaned back, the creak of the bench the only sound between them. "No one's ever asked me that," he said finally. "Not like that." When X asked again, unfazed, Trump turned his head toward the horizon. The air was warm, but suddenly it felt heavy. "Some people hate what they don't understand," Trump said. "Some people hate what threatens their version of the world. And some people..." He paused, his voice growing quieter. "Some people hate mirrors." X tilted his head. "You're a mirror?" "I've been one," Trump admitted. "At times, I've made people look at parts of themselves they'd rather not see. But I've also made mistakes, real ones, and people don't separate the man from the moment." The boy absorbed this. Trump glanced down at him. "Why do you ask?" X's response was soft. "Because people on the internet say you're bad, but you don't seem bad. You seem tired." Trump was taken aback. He looked at the boy differently now, not as a mere curiosity, but as a voice that had slipped through the noise. "I am tired," Trump said. "But that's not something people want to hear from me." "Why not?" "Because if I'm tired, then I'm human. And humans are easier to forgive. It's harder to hate someone if you think they're breakable." X sat beside him now, small legs swinging over the edge of the bench. My mom says people who don't cry are carrying too much. Trump didn't reply. He looked out at the sea. I used to cry, he said quietly. When I was a boy before everything had to be steel. Did someone tell you to stop? X asked. Trump didn't answer right away. X looked up at him again. Do you ever miss it? Trump glanced down at him. Every day. They sat there for a while. No speech. No entourage. Just a boy who asked the question no one else dared, and a man who, for once, didn't feel the instinct to perform. When Elon finally came looking for them, he found them sitting shoulder to shoulder in a stillness that felt strangely sacred. Trump stood. He's a sharp one, he said to Elon. Don't let the world sharpen him too soon. Elon nodded, curious but silent. Later that night, Trump opened a notebook he hadn't touched in years. He wrote one line, "A boy asked why they hate me and somehow it made me feel loved." Donald Trump had been asked a million questions in his life. On stage, on air, behind closed doors, and under bright lights. Questions meant to trap him, praise him, expose him, and define him. He could bat them away like a tennis pro, quick, deflective, often louder than necessary. But that one question from that 5-year-old boy had stuck somewhere he couldn't shake. Why do people hate you? He'd heard worse. He'd been called worse. But no reporter, pundit, or politician had ever asked it that simply, because they weren't trying to understand him. X had been, and that made all the difference. The following morning, Trump woke up earlier than usual. He skipped the usual string of morning cable clips and instead sat by the large window in his bedroom, sipping coffee as the early light streamed across the Palm Beach ocean. The notebook sat open beside him. He hadn't kept a journal in decades, not really. Not since the late 80s, when he used to jot down random ideas and half-planned speeches in spiral-bound notebooks. He never finished them. But this time was different. He didn't write for the world. He wrote because the world, through the eyes of a child, had finally looked back. He stared at the blank page and wrote slowly, pressing harder than usual. When did I become the idea of a man instead of the man himself? He underlined it twice. Later that day, Barron wandered into the study while Trump was reviewing a draft of a statement on energy policy. Barron glanced at the open notebook. You writing again? He asked. Trump nodded. Kind of. Is it about the little Musk kid? Trump smiled faintly. What makes you say that? You've been quiet since the garden, Barron said. That usually means you're thinking about something that doesn't fit on a headline. Trump closed the folder in front of him. He asked me why people hate me. Barron didn't flinch. What did you say? I told him the truth, or a version of it. And what's the version you didn't say out loud? Trump studied his son. Then, with unusual honesty, he replied, that I hate parts of myself sometimes. And maybe that's what they're really reacting to. Maybe they're just reflecting what I give them. Barron didn't know how to respond at first. He just nodded, then said, you should write that down too. That night, Trump flipped through some of his old speeches, not to revise them but to see himself in them. Who he used to be, who he tried to become, who he pretended not to be. The cadence of those speeches was unmistakable. Bold, confident, repetitive, full of sharp contrasts. Good versus bad, winners versus losers. But as he read them now, a strange feeling crept in. They were missing something, not power, not volume, but pause. There had never been any space in his words for contradiction, for regret, for grace. He had always raced to the next sentence, the next jab, the next moment of dominance. And for the first time he didn't want to race. He opened the notebook again and wrote a single word, pause. Then underneath he wrote, I think I forgot what that felt like until a child made me stop. 3 days later he sent a handwritten note to Elon Musk. Just a short card, no White House letterhead. Your boy is remarkable. Keep his questions close. The world needs them more than its answers. No signature. Just a D at the bottom. 1 week later, Trump stood before a small private group of veterans. No cameras. He was expected to deliver a speech about national pride, patriotism, and perseverance. Instead, he did something few had seen him do in decades. He spoke plainly. He paused. He mentioned no enemies, no rivalries, only the weight of legacy. There's a boy out there, he said, who asked me why I'm hated. And I couldn't give him the answer he deserved. But I realized something. It's not about why they hate you. It's about whether you give them a reason to stop. The room was still silent. No applause, just quiet contemplation. And somehow it felt more meaningful that way. That evening, back at his residence, Trump picked up his notebook again, this time writing longer than before. The question still lingered in his mind. Might always be there. but so was the boy who asked it. And the truth was, he didn't break me. He reminded me I could still bend. A week had passed since X's question, the one that landed not like a stone but like a seed. It didn't spark public outcry. There were no leaks, no headlines, no viral videos. But inside Donald Trump, something was shifting, quietly, deliberately, and uncomfortably. He didn't tell anyone about it. Not Melania, not his communications director, not even Barron. But in the privacy of his office just after dawn, Trump pulled out a yellow legal pad. Not the notebook this time, but something older, the kind he had used in the 1980s when drafting letters to buyers and architects. He wrote a title on the top line, Statement, I'll never read below it. He began writing. Not for the public but for the part of myself I rarely look in the eye. To those who hate me, I don't blame you anymore. Not because I think you're right, but because I think I understand something now. Hate is never about one moment. It's about patterns, and I made one, loud, sharp, relentless. It served me well in some rooms, but not all rooms. A boy asked me a question that no adult ever had the courage or innocence to ask. Why do they hate you? And for the first time, I realized the answer wasn't about policy. It wasn't about ratings. It wasn't about the press. It was about me. About what I let the world see. Maybe I played a role too well. Maybe I stopped asking myself whether the role fit the man I once was. Trump stopped writing. He wasn't crying. He wasn't unraveling. He was simply sitting still. And that was new. That afternoon, during a private meeting with his PR advisor, Trump interrupted the usual talking points. I want to record something, he said. A short message. Just audio, no visuals, no edits. His advisor blinked, clearly surprised. What kind of message? A message without a punchline, Trump replied. The advisor hesitated. What should we call it? Trump thought for a moment before saying, nothing. Just post it when I say. Not to win. Just to speak. The next day, a 58-second audio clip appeared on his less frequently used Truth Social account. The caption read, I was asked a question. I've been thinking about it. The voice in the audio was unmistakably Trump's, but different. Measured. Unscripted. Without sharp edges. A child asked me why people hate me. I didn't have the perfect answer, but I've spent a week thinking about it. And maybe the truth is I've given them reasons. Not always fair ones, not always intentional, but real ones. I've also given them reasons to believe in something, even if we disagreed on what that something was. If you hate me, you probably have your reasons. I just hope you still believe people can change, because I do. Even if it took a 5-year-old to make me say it. That was it. No outro, no call to action, no attack. Just a pause and an upload. The reaction was divided as expected. Some mocked it, others ignored it, but a surprising number of people across party lines commented, that didn't sound like the Donald Trump I know, and that's why I listened. Elon Musk didn't comment publicly, but 2 days later, a handwritten note arrived at Mar-a-Lago, sealed in a silver envelope. Inside was a short letter written in careful block letters, clearly not from Elon. Thank you for answering my question. I think grown-ups don't know how to answer unless someone small reminds them what matters. Signed simply X. That night, Trump stared at the boy's note for what felt like an eternity. He didn't feel redeemed, but he felt something rarer, understood. The morning after the audio clip went viral, Donald Trump awoke to something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Silence, but without judgment. It wasn't the stiff silence of headlines being drafted. It wasn't the tense silence of staff waiting for orders. It was space. The kind of space that comes after someone tells the truth and no longer fears what follows. He walked out onto the Mar-a-Lago balcony alone. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, and the ocean stretched before him in shades of blue-gray. In his hand, he held X's note. I think grown-ups don't know how to answer unless someone small reminds them what matters. He smiled, not like a man who had won, but like a man who had finally stopped pretending to be someone else. That afternoon, his assistant knocked on the study door. Sir, you've got a letter. It came from Queens. No return address, but it was hand-delivered. Trump raised an eyebrow. Bring it in. He opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a card with a pressed violet flower taped to the bottom. No return address. No political references. Just neat, looping handwriting. You probably don't remember me, but I remember you. Before the suits, before the cameras, before you were Donald Trump, you helped me carry a suitcase once. When we were both 12, you said, don't worry. Strong people help people who look like they're about to fall. I never forgot that. I watched your message this week and I think you're still carrying things. But this time you're not hiding it. And that's strength too. No name, just the flower. Trump stared at the card for a long time. He couldn't remember the moment, but he believed it. Maybe, just maybe, that boy had never fully disappeared. Later that evening he asked Barron to walk with him down by the beach. No security detail. No cameras. Just father and son, walking in silence, their bare feet sinking into the sand. "Did you hear the recording?" Trump asked. "Everyone did. Did you believe it?" Barron looked at his father. "I believed you meant it. And I think maybe it was the first time you ever said something to the world that was just for you." Trump nodded. "It's strange. I said less in that message than I ever have, but it felt like the most honest thing I've ever said." "That's probably why it worked," Barron said. They stopped walking. The waves lapped at their ankles as Trump turned to face the sea. "Sometimes I wonder what people will remember when I'm gone." Barron didn't hesitate. Maybe not the towers. Maybe not the debates. Maybe just one recording and one 5-year-old who didn't know what he was starting. Trump chuckled. "That kid. He came out of nowhere." "Maybe," Barron said. "Or maybe he came right on time." The next morning Trump reached for his notebook again. He wrote a title across the top, "Things I Never Said Out Loud." Then beneath it he wrote, "I've made more noise than I needed to. I confused strength with control. I've been afraid to be small. I forgot how powerful a question can be. And I never thanked the people who saw me before I knew who I was becoming." He closed the book, took a deep breath, and didn't feel regret. He felt ready. That evening he made a private call to Elon. Not to discuss politics, not to negotiate, just to say thank you. "Your boy doesn't know it yet, but he pulled something honest out of me. I didn't think I still had it." Elon was quiet for a moment, then replied, "That's what he does. He asks questions that adults don't ask anymore. Don't let the world train it out of him." "I won't." And Elon, "Yeah, tell him, people might still hate me, but today I don't." 2 weeks had passed since the garden. 2 weeks since X asked a question no adult had ever dared to ask. 2 weeks since Trump, once the most public man in the world, decided to speak honestly with no strategy in mind. And now, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, he sat alone in his private library, holding a blank white envelope in his hand. He wasn't writing for history. He wasn't writing for the cameras. He was writing for a 5-year-old who had asked him a question that could take a lifetime to answer. He stared at the blank page for a long time, then finally picked up a pen and began writing. "Dear X, when you sat beside me on that garden bench, I expected you to ask me about rockets or cars or maybe your favorite cartoons. But instead, you asked me the one question no one had ever asked me honestly: why do people hate you? I didn't have a perfect answer then, and I still don't. But I've been thinking about it every day since. I used to think hate came from weakness. Then I thought it came from envy. I blamed the media. I blamed my enemies. But the truth? Sometimes it came from me. From the way I spoke too loudly when I should have listened. From the way I built walls when people needed a door. From forgetting that people want to believe in something soft every once in a while, even from the people they fear. When you asked me that question, I didn't feel judged. I felt seen. And that did something no victory ever did. It made me pause, think, and write. I want you to know something, X. Sometimes adults forget they were once small. That they once asked big questions without trying to win an argument. You reminded me of that, and for that, I'm more grateful than you'll probably ever realize. Keep asking, especially when people get uncomfortable. That's when the truth gets closer. And if anyone ever asks you why people hate them, maybe you can give them the gift you gave me. Not an answer, but a reason to look inward and maybe start again with more light. Your friend, Donald J. Trump. He folded the letter, slipped it into the envelope, and wrote simply on the front, "To X." He handed it to a trusted aide with strict instructions: no press, no photos. Deliver it by hand. And if he never opens it, that's okay. I needed to write it more than he needed to read it. The following day the letter arrived. Elon handed it to his son at breakfast. X didn't immediately tear it open. He held it, studied it, and then carefully slipped it into a small wooden box where he kept paper stars, rocket sketches, and the drawing he had once made of a garden bench with 2 figures sitting quietly side by side. He would open it one day. Maybe not soon, but when he was ready, because the truth inside wasn't time-sensitive, it was timeless. If you love this story, subscribe to Hidden Raylit for more and share with someone who can learn something from it.